Chapter 13, The People You Meet. In accepting the invitation of my next-door neighbor Patricia to join the Greenacre Younger Set, I made my first real step away from the Catholic Church. While I was still attending Mass at our local church, now at Fairy Meadow, the YCW connection began to fade. However, so did the Greenacre Younger Set. After several members moved on with work and with marriage, enthusiasm waned. Patricia too started looking elsewhere. Still, it had been fun while it lasted. A year on, the YCW was almost unrecognizable from its former self. Father Terry had by all accounts completely revamped the group. One of his winning initiatives was to link up with other YCW groups in the diocese. The first was the group from Minto near Campbelltown. Then one night after Mass I ran into a friend who I had got to know during the dark days of Father Doug. She was so upbeat about the group and what Father Terry was doing. What's more, new faces were appearing in the ranks all the time. Her sales pitch worked, and a few Sundays later, at the second of the Minto matchups, I made my return. It was to be a special night, a fundraiser for the Bangladesh famine. Call it fate or providence or just chance. Whatever it was, but that night I met two people who would completely change my life. Dow was the first. A member of the Minto group, you could hardly miss him. Tall, blonde and handsome, he had an aura about him. We introduced ourselves and started talking. The rapport was immediate. His voice and personality would have made any conversation engaging. But it was his wonderful sense of humor and fun that drew people to him. You sensed too a deep intelligence and understanding of life. An old soul. And we had much in common, starting with, you guessed it, music. But also, we both came from large families. And were the same age. Again by chance, Dow had organized to meet a friend, Margaret, after the meeting. Catching up for coffee after a YCW was a long-standing custom convened outside papal hours. Usually at a coffee lounge in Cura Street. I had seen Margaret occasionally round the traps, but this was my first opportunity to speak with her. We too had much in common. Her brothers all attended St. Paul's, and she, like me and Dow at the time, was a student. Dow was in training at the Rural Bank, Margaret in her first year at Teachers College, and I, accountancy at BHP. Within minutes we were like old friends. One night, one meeting, and your whole life changes completely. Getting a lift. The following Wednesday night Father Terry convened a meeting of concerned people for the plight of Bangladesh. It was August 1971. I was very keen to play an active part in doing something, anything, to help alleviate the struggle and suffering of those people. Bangladesh had been caught now in a year-long famine. People were starving in their thousands. Many living in stormwater pipes, a fact I had witnessed on television. Margaret and Dow were at the meeting the following Wednesday night. A plan was put in place for a 48-hour famine to be staged on a weekend next month. Primarily as a community awareness venture and fundraiser. This turned out to be quite successful. The former Beatle George Harrison organized a fundraiser concert at Madison Square Garden in New York at the same time. After the meeting I took the opportunity to ask Margaret if I might be able to give her a ride home in my new car. I was very proud of my canary yellow, newly released Volkswagen 1600 Superbug. Not quite 2 months old. It was a massive upgrade from my former 1200 VW. Over time, it had got the somewhat dubious, but nonetheless accurate moniker of a pregnant roller skate or the inverse pothole. Margaret declined as she was driving Dow back to her place. He was sleeping over and returning to work the next day. He had thumbed a ride to Wollongong. Having never done anything like that, I was impressed. That the two might have been interested in each other, I didn't give much thought. People hitchhiked and slept over all the time back then. Hey, that's how it was. No ATM, no credit cards, no mobile phones, no internet. Hitchhiking was the Uber transport of the day, Australia-wide. People dropped in and stayed over all the time back then. No questions asked. The bottom line was, I too was beginning to enjoy Margaret's company. so I took a punt and dropped round to see her the following Saturday morning. I was met at the door by her father, a local business owner. By a small coincidence, I had some indirect dealings with his company via my work as a purchasing officer for Australian Iron and Steel Port Kembla. Waiting for Margaret, we got to know each other a little better that morning. Margaret did come out with me that night, to see a band we both liked at a city venue. On the drive home, I asked Margaret if we could go out again. She informed me she had also been asked out by Dow and to give her time. So I gave her my phone number and left it at that. The three of us were back together again, at the next meeting for Bangladesh. And again, Dow hitchhiked the 60-kilometer trip. This time I offered to drive Dow back to his home at Macquarie Fields. It was an opportunity too good to miss. While it allowed Dow and I time to chat and get to know each other a little better, it gave me the opportunity to let my superbug loose on the late-night highway between Wollongong and Liverpool. The man in the mirror. Everyone who knew Dow saw him as one of nature's gentlemen. You were drawn to his genuine integrity. And a more likable person you cannot imagine. And if his contributions to YCW meetings was anything to go on, highly intelligent. Another good indication of where this exceptional 21-year-old stood in the world was his rising career in the banking industry. But it was Margaret who would later shed some light on his deep truth and integrity. She quietly revealed to me, sometime later, without going into detail of Dow's internal struggles. He had expressed to her his fear of knowing that he could never truly love a woman. This was a shock. She asked me not to mention it. Still surprised, I assured her that I would honor her request. About a month later, following evening Sunday Mass, I drove Margaret home. We had just got in the door, when the phone rang. The caller asked to speak to Margaret. It was Dow. It was a heartbreaking call. He was calling to tell her he could no longer hide the truth of his sexuality. She heard his pain through his tears. Both our hearts sank on hearing this. Here was a man who at 21 years of age had the courage to truly look in the mirror and face himself. Remember the times, the early 1970s. Being gay was not only illegal, but it was looked upon by 90% of the community as vile and repulsive. It marked you out. Exposed, you could lose your job, your home, your family, friends, even your life. You survived by living in a perpetual state of fear and fabrication. Men and women hid in plain sight, in marriages, families, neighborhoods, playing sport and working hard in their job or profession. The closet door was firmly shut and bolted. That night, the three of us drove back to Dow's home in Macquarie Fields. And we talked. Lifelong friendships are rarely recognized at the genesis, and this one was to prove no different. Yet something clearly was stirring in each of us as the night and drive wore on. It was 1971, and this rich, wonderful friendship was destined to unfold on many levels. There was undoubtedly a bond, and each of us sensed it. In August 73, Dow would be my best man at Margaret's and my wedding. And 2 years on, he would be godfather to our firstborn Roseanne. True north. Just as the public stoush with Father Doug had upset me and left me dazed at my inability to confront the priest, Dow's coming out also caused me to consider my lot. For like the dance floor showdown, my friend's revelation upset my inner compass. Dow's courage and honesty, I have to say, was a little confronting. It was as if, in accepting Dow's truth, I was forced to examine my own. Whatever that was. Margaret had taken the revelation in her stride. In many ways that didn't surprise me. It was very much part of her persona, thoughtful, caring, supportive. All things that marked her out as special. Her feelings too must have taken a jolt, as she and Dow had been close. That was to be expected. What was not expected were my own feelings. I had to accept that my friend's truth was maybe closer to my own. Close enough to cause me to think. I had never thought of myself as gay. Male friends were exactly that. And while I wasn't the alpha male, footballer or surfer, I certainly wasn't the total opposite. Far from it. but there were moments as I got older, when I wondered where I stood in terms of my own true north. After some soul-searching and time in lieu, I decided that whatever my truth was, it was not for publication. It was as if Tao's disclosure had cast both light and shadow. If this wonderfully warm, charming, and intelligent man, with a dulcet voice and handsome looks was gay, how could I be? It just didn't add up. So I pulled down the shutters and got on with what I saw as my life. After all, closets are for clothes. Margaret's and mine. Family snapshot, Sister Frances Mary. My youngest sister Fran was born November 1956. Right from day one she had a sunny smile and an equally sunny disposition. To give you an idea of how far the age range stretched in the Ryan family, she was 24 years younger than Joy. And as such she was the baby of the family. A pretty little girl, with her long plaits with ribbons, she was so cute. In kindergarten each afternoon she would arrive at my class to accompany me as I was the traffic monitor. She would wait with me as I oversaw the children at the pedestrian crossing. After completing her school certificate she too went to work at Davis and Penny, with Veronica, Colleen, and Mum. She married Peter and together they had a son and 2 daughters. When the children moved on to high school, Fran got work in administration in Wollongong Hospital. She made quite a career of it too. We remained close throughout the years. My children would become close friends as cousins with hers. Friendships that last to this day. Sadly, like many of my brothers and sisters, her marriage didn't last. But years later she would find love and much to share in a new relationship with Terry. Family snapshot, my mother May. By the time Sister Fran left school, my mother had been a working woman at Davis and Penny since 1965. Like so many mothers and housewives of her generation, going to work was a release. Not just a release from the twin binds of housework and children, but a release of self. Part of the workforce, yes, but equally as someone using her innate talent and life experience. Not to mention the pay packet that went with it. And our household was better for it. Living at home now as an adult allowed me the privilege of getting to know my mother. But now as the woman she was. We now shared experiences, from work and beyond. Things we found of interest, news, people, and of course the never-ending narrative for the family she was at the heart of. The release was also something we all felt at home. Colleen, Fran, and I assumed more responsibility for the running and maintenance of the house. Meals and the like. The whole feel of the house seemed to change. Something of a cooperative or living in a shared house. Looking back, I think it must have been something that put a smile on the dial of both my parents. You could see it, in the photos of the two taken at the time. The fruits of their labors as it were. She and Dad, if anything, seemed closer than ever. Particularly with Dad retired. It was as if you got a glimpse of how they were, when they first got together. Before all of us arrived on their doorstep. She seemed to me to be no longer my mother, but my best friend. We had just the best of times, with Dad too. And she was the one I first came out to. More about that later. Suffice to say Mum, like so many women of her time, were truly unique. The last of a dying breed. Unmatched with their strength and endurance, love and wisdom. Theirs was truly a long and winding road.